Scout, good to have you with us. We'll continue to track the latest on the ground. I'm pleased to bring in our first guest. He's the former governor of Minnesota, Tim Pawlenty, who's also served as a criminal prosecutor. And before he was governor of the state, he was the majority leader in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Sir, a pleasure to have you today. First off, your reaction to this breaking detail that President Trump says it was a very good call with Walz. Can they find some common ground now that we have obviously outrage, but also activists on the ground there and a concern about more violence?
Yes, this post by the president represents very good news and welcome news for Minnesota. And if we can get each side to back off their maximalist approach to this situation, hopefully they can climb down a rung or two on the ladder and still meet the objectives of getting the criminals out without having all the hullabaloo and violence and accidental killings or killings.
Governor, as a former prosecutor, I want to get your take on some reporting by independent journalist Cam Higbee. He is exposing the Signal chat, and he says that Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan may be the administrator of the Signal chat group. This was tracking and then impeding federal agents in the process here. I want to play a little bit of her own social media where this is what she was telling protesters, not just to be peacefully out there, but in her words, use their bodies.
Generally being uncool with the fact that our neighbors are being disappeared. P.S. Without due process, it is just called kidnapping. Then show up and use your voice. Put your body on the line and use nonviolent direct action.
She also was seen at a campaign event wearing a hijab at a mall on a Somali TV station. Her allegiances, obviously, with the Somali community. But this type of rhetoric, if there is a connection, and potentially even to Minnesota officials where it's a state-funded website, what's the legal exposure here? Because people are watching this type of rhetoric, Governor.
Of course, Signal chats probably are not on a government platform or government authorized or government paid for it. At least I hope so in that context. And her words matter. She's a lieutenant governor. She's also, by the way, a candidate for the U.S. Senate. For your viewers who may not know her, she is way, way, way left. And she uses words there where it says use your body, but then she says nonviolent. But it gets back to the basic point. People, of course, are free to exercise their right to protest peacefully. But when it crosses the line from not peacefully to obstruction or violence or hurting other people or breaking things or certainly bumping up in a physical way with law enforcement, that's where the line has to be drawn. And the problem here is the local officials will not help set up a perimeter between protesters and the ICE operators. And you get all this conflation between the ICE operators and the protesters that leads to all sorts of problems, as we've seen in recent days.
Yeah, well said. I think there were some links in the chat that possibly went to state websites. There's reports of these agitators and activists having food drops, coordinated radio command. We'll watch it closely. Obviously, a lot is happening on the ground. Governor, just a quick reaction. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on ABC talking about the shooting of Alex Preddy. Here's what he had to say.
I am sorry that this gentleman is dead, but he did bring a 9mm semi-automatic weapon with 2 cartridges to what was supposed to be a peaceful protest.
There's no evidence that he brandished the gun whatsoever. In fact, it appears
but he
brought
he was
a disarmed
gun.
before
he brought a gun. Have you ever gone to a protest, Jonathan?
I mean, we do have a Second Amendment in this country that...
Jonathan, have you ever gone to a protest?
So these are the types of discussions that are happening, very polarizing to our country. What do you make of the administration's messaging, which many on the left and the right are attacking, and obviously what we're seeing here with a potential now for President Trump and Walz to come together to make sure that things do not go even more sideways, Governor?
Well, a few things. As to this most recent shooting of Mr. Preddy, we need to be careful not to draw any conclusions until all the evidence is in. But what we do know so far is he was a legal permit holder for a concealed carry gun. I was the person who signed as governor that law into law twice, by the way. So I know it quite well. It is not illegal or inappropriate if you have a permit to bring a gun into a public space, as long as you don't brandish it or pull it. And in this case, the shooting of Mr. Preddy after he was apparently disarmed does raise some pretty serious questions and concerns. And it looks like he was shot up to 9 times. So there's a lot of questions left to be answered around that shooting. But the fact that he brought a gun by itself is not illegal or inappropriate as long as it's not brandished or pulled in a public spot.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.